Our next guest needs little introduction to anyone who gleans their news of the region through Twitter. Question, is he actually human? Or a very sophisticated aggregation stroke opinion algorithm? Many, many times this is very, very hard to figure out. It's really a great pleasure, and I'm so happy that in the arc of this afternoon, we're able to have Sultan Saud Al-Qasimi talking about the social media spring. So will you please welcome Sultan? Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm actually here trying to bridge three very different worlds, but three worlds that are connected nonetheless. The worlds of social activism, the world of art, and the world of journalism, I think, that were very much that very much came to light in the last 15 months in the Arab world. I want to start by giving you an overview of what social media looks like in the Arab world, what it looked like, and what happened to it in the last 5 years. There was a series of reports called the Arab Social Media Reports that were published by the Dubai School of Government. Apparently, by January 2010, there were 21 million Facebook users in the Arab world. By the end of the year, that number had increased by 15 million. The total number of Arabs on Twitter, for example, went up from 1.5 million to 6.5 million. This is also in the last 5 years. Now, the number takes into consideration whether you were active or inactive. I think less than that is probably active. Basically, number of internet users in the Arab world went up from 26 million in 2006 to around 60 million in 2011. That's almost just over twice as many internet users in the Arab world. People generally assume that social media activism started with the Arab Spring, but that is incorrect. We have had Arabs active on social media and Arabs who are artists active on social media many, many years before that. And one example I want to highlight is a young artist from Lebanon called Zaina Khalil, and I will show you some of her art in a bit. Zaina Khalil actually kept a blog called the Beirut Update. And she was, during the Israeli attack on Lebanon in the summer of 2006, her blog became one of the most important sources of news in the region. And she was sitting in her apartment updating what was happening. And she was basically providing a personal account of the 33-day attack by Israel on Lebanon. And CNN, BBC, New York Times, Guardian, Der Spiegel, all basically quoted from her blog. Finally, she published a book after the Israeli attack. I just want to read to you just one short line from the blog. There are cluster bombs everywhere. They dropped cluster bombs on us. There are so many that didn't explode. They are so dangerous. And Dahya, the other day, people put up banners on top of the rubble of the buildings. The banners read, "Made in the USA." This is from her August 2006 blog entry. Zaina wasn't the only Arab social media, basically artist who also became an activist. All of us, I mean, many of us know about an artist called Qadir Atiyah. We will show you some of his work. We have them in the foundation in the UAE. When we were trying to interview Qadir Atiyah, when Mandy was here tried to interview him, he was actually in the streets demonstrating. So it was difficult to get hold of him. Another very famous Egyptian artist who also became an accidental activist, basically, was Khalid Hafez, very famous Egyptian artist. We also have him in our art foundation. Khalid Hafez is the one who broke the news of Ahmed Bassiouni's death. Ahmed Bassiouni is an Egyptian artist, 28 years old. He was killed by a sniper shot in on the 28th of January 2011. And in fact, he represented Egypt in the Venice Biennial. And because I know Khalid Hafid, I immediately translated the tweet, the Facebook update into a tweet and broke it into the Twitter sphere. Over the past year, we've also seen a lot of artists who are activists who have been targeted by various regimes in the Arab world. I think I'll highlight Egypt only because I'm so interested and knowledgeable about that country specifically. We've had just in the last couple of weeks Ala al-Aswani, who's known to you as the author of the Yaqubian Building, who has been referred to a military court because of charges of incitement to demolish the state and incitement against the military rulers of Egypt. Ala is very active on social media. He has about 270,000 followers on Twitter. In fact, social media played a very important role with the Arab uprisings. You had the Facebook page as Shahid. I don't know how aware you are of Wa'il Ghanim and We Are All Khalid Saeed page. Basically, Wa'il Ghanim was a Google executive living in the UAE, and from the UAE he started this page after the lynching, I should say, of Khalid Saeed in June 2010. Started this page called Shahid, the Martyr, and within a few days it garnered tens of thousands of followers, and it is basically where the 25th of January was chosen as a date for protest. Now it has about 1.9 million likes on or fans on Facebook. Some of the biggest activists today. I'm trying to bridge really between artists and social media activists in the Arab uprising. Some of the biggest activists we have today in Egypt and the Arab world are artists. People don't know their names, but they are behind some of the most important initiatives. I'll highlight one of them, Musarreen. Musarreen is an initiative that just started a few weeks ago in Egypt, and the people behind it are Khalid Abdullah, Aida Al-Kashif, Lubna Darwish, Umar, Robert Hamilton, and all of these guys are artists. They're all video filmmakers. And Musarreen became so popular that in January 2012, just a month and a half ago, it became the most popular the most popular non-profit YouTube channel in the world. Imagine all these other channels, tens of thousands of channels on YouTube. This was the most popular channel, Musarreen, started by these young artists / activists. People also aren't aware that one of the first activists to be detained in Egypt's military detention is also an artist, Ahmed al-Bahiri, who was sentenced to 5 years in jail, a 32-year-old. I will also highlight perhaps a friend of mine called Ganzir, an Egyptian artist, along with Aida Al-Kashif and Nadim X, were all detained by the military police in downtown Cairo. I will show you the image for spraying graffiti onto the walls of Cairo. So there has been a strong correlation and connection between activists who are artists and the Arab uprising. This is probably something that a lot of people aren't aware of, all the way beginning with Zaina Khalil in Lebanon and Algeria and the Gulf as well. Social media basically, you know, as Arabs have taken social media, they thought that social media was the sphere that allowed them to communicate with each other unhindered, uninterrupted, and uncensored. Unfortunately, over the past few months, we've seen a lot of Arab governments enter social media. Now, this is either through the government officials entering themselves or them sending trolls into social media, basically to intimidate the users and to scare them off and send them threats. And this is something that has caused a lot of the activists maybe to either tone down their rhetoric or maybe take their accounts onto private or perhaps use a different lingo. It's very unfortunate that the censorship that we've seen in the old media in the Arab world has now started to impeach basically on the freedom that we have enjoyed for several months on new media. I'll just talk a little bit about this foundation that I set up 2 years ago to promote Arab art. A lot of the artists who are activists, social media users are also included in this collection. I don't know, what can you see here? Yes. So this is the foundation I started that's in Sharjah. This is the Zain Khalil's blog, Beirut Update, that I read you an excerpt from, which a lot of the news sites were quoting from. Sadly, the blog has stopped being updated. She lost a very close family friend, and then she stopped blogging. But it still remains as a testimony to as one of the most important and influential blogs in the Arab world. The next piece I want to show you is a piece we're showing in our next exhibition that opens this week in the UAE. This is a piece called Nation State by Larissa Sansour. And the reason I mention it is, once again, trying to bring social media back into the equation here. Larissa is a Palestinian artist who applied for the Lacoste Prize in the US, I think, and she basically submitted three photographs, and she was told that she would have to withdraw them because they were very politically sensitive, and Lacoste does not want to affiliate itself with a very politically sensitive issue. And I will show you the next slide, which is another piece we're showing this week. Basically, what Larissa did in this series is is put all the Palestinians basically in a building, in a tower, and name every floor after a Palestinian city. This is Jerusalem, and what happened was, when Lacoste asked her to withdraw, there was a huge social media uproar online, and people started calling for the boycott. I started calling for the boycott of Lacoste, we had people saying we'll never buy their products again. So it just shows you the power of social media in the Arab uprisings, in the Arab revolutions. This is Ganzir, who's a wonderful artist, a graffiti artist who was detained on May 27th, 2011, along with two other artists for spraying. I will show you the next slide is what he actually was detained for. This is a piece with the tank that was showing in the Casa Arab in Madrid until a few weeks ago. And he's also here honoring one of the martyrs of the Egyptian uprising. This is the piece that got Ganzir into trouble. It's a very popular, basically an icon of the Egyptian uprising today. It's on stickers, it's on T-shirts. Over here we have, you see, this is the foundation I started. In the very end of the photo, the above photo, you'll see the word democracy with the letter N, and it says democracy. This is a piece by Qadir Atiyah, the artist activist from Algeria. Below is Huda Lotfi, who's also taking part in the Global Art Forum here. Finally, we have Ghada Amr, once again in the collection of the Mathaf in Qatar. Basically, these are some of the other artworks that we are showing in our current exhibition. We try to mirror a contemporary Arab world, and social media and activism has played a huge part in shaping the modern history, the contemporary history of the Arab world. I won't take too long. I don't know if I have any time for questions. Shumon, are you here? Maybe I'll take one or two questions. If anybody has any question, I'm happy to answer. Yeah, I have about 100,000 on Twitter. Yeah, I don't know how many, several thousands on Facebook. They get retweeted. Yes. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to answer that. Yeah, let me just answer an issue that Yasmin brought up in the previous panel, was how many Egyptians are on Twitter, and the number basically, the official number was about 177,000. This is last year. This number is completely incorrect, because you have people like Ala Al-Aswani and Wael Ghunaim who have upwards of 270,000, 280,000 people just on Twitter. Some of them obviously overlap, but I think the number 500,000 is probably closer to the reality. Is there any other question?
Living in the UAE, I'm often doing research, art-related research, and I quite often find that websites are blocked. And I find this very frustrating. I'm talking about art-related websites, even sometimes auction houses or galleries. And I just wanted to get your comments on that. And do you see this situation changing anytime soon? Because I feel that this could be holding us back a little bit in terms of our growth and becoming part of the international art world.
I'm against any censorship. I think there should be no censorship at all. Obviously, unless there was something that was damaging to children, maybe, but I think there should be no censorship, basically for material that adults would consume. I think it's very unfortunate that the UAE censors. All the Gulf states censor, unfortunately. I think this is something that we have to move forward to. We had Middlesex University censored because of the word sex in it for some time. So it just shows you it's very robotic. There really isn't very intelligent censoring. So I hope this is something we move forward from in the near future, but I'm not holding my breath. You had a question here?
Aren't you worried that with Facebook and Twitter you get a lot of armchair revolutionaries, people like commenting and seeming to move to the front in the discussions, which actually are not really playing any role in actual political change?
They call this clicktivism. So I'm not worried about that at all. In fact, we are educating as many people as possible. Remember, the people who came to the street on the 25th of January 2011 were mostly people who had never been to the street. You did have, because of April 6th and other movements in Egypt, you did have people go to demonstrations, but they were in the hundreds at most, and maybe a couple of thousand in one of the most famous demonstrations. But on that day, you had several tens of thousands, and a lot of them learned about it through social media. They educated themselves, even by sharing and by commenting. You are actually taking part in getting the ball rolling and educating yourself and educating others. So this is nothing that should worry anybody. Any other question? There's one in the very end, in the back. Would you like to raise your voice? And I'll repeat your question. When am I going to reach an Arabic version of my tweet? I tweet in English. It's something that gets me a lot of flack. And the reason is I translate from Arabic into English. I do speak Arabic. People sometimes don't know that. But what I do is I found a niche in a market, I should say, where I try to fill a gap where people who aren't Arab or people who are Arab who don't speak Arabic very well want to learn about what's happening in the Arab world, and that's the niche that I try to service. So there are many, many more intelligent people who speak Arabic than me on Twitter, and I highly recommend following them. Thank you very much.
That's good. Thank you. Huge round of applause. Thank you very much, Sultan Saud Al Qasimi.